I've been a fee-only financial advisor now for over 20 years. And I bet you can guess what the number one question I get asked in my role. And it's, hey, Azul, do I have enough money to retire? And in today's video, we're going to talk about a 60-year-old that saved up $1.5 million for retirement. And we're going to look at this situation from two angles. The first is, what does retirement look like for this person if they continue to work to 65? And what does it look like if they retire now? And it's a very common question. Given what my assets are, what does it look like if I keep working? And what does it look like if I just hang up my cleats now and retire now? So let's jump in. So I'm going to use a free online tool. It's available. Anybody can jump on the internet, which is why I'm using this, and use it and follow along with me if you want, or just watch the video and then say, hey, that was interesting. I wondered what it would look like for me. And then you can tweak things along the way, which is why I like to use this tool. It's not what I use at work. I use it so that you can follow along, and it's a tool that you can use without having to bring out your Visa card. Okay, let's jump in. So the name of this tool is honestmath.com. And the reason I like it is it does a Monte Carlo simulation, which is pretty advanced. There's not a lot of tools on the internet that do this for free. This is one of the few. Okay, so let's jump in. We've got an individual. You can see under the personal information, we've got an individual with 60 years old, and he has a $1.5 million. And birthday, January 1964, that puts him at 60. This person for this analysis is not retired yet, and they're going to retire at 65. Their Social Security is going to kick in at full retirement age at 67. I put in $3,600 as retirement income from Social Security. And the reason I did that is the average check is $1,800 per month. So I'm assuming this person's married and this person and their spouse both get the same size Social Security check at $1,800. Now, if you're single, just go in and change it and make it $1,800 instead of $3,600. And you can see that starts at 67. That's full retirement age. I have it growing at 3%, which is what I'm assuming for inflation. You'll see that later. Okay, so we put that in. Now, the next section is let's look at the portfolio. We're putting in $1.5 million. You can see the stock allocation is 60% stocks, 40% bonds. That's a pretty common asset allocation. I'm not suggesting you use it. None of what I'm sharing in today's video is financial advice for you. I just want these things on your radar screen, but I can tell you it's not unusual for me to see somebody that's 60 years old with a 60% asset allocation to stocks and 40% to bonds. Okay, you can see they're going to continue to contribute to their savings until they retire, 10% of what they earn. Now let's go to the next tab, which is expenses. Here I'm putting in $6,250. Again, inflation at 3%. And the reason I'm putting in $6,250, this is what their distributions are going to be from all of their accounts, is that's $75,000 a year. And that's the median household income currently in the United States. Household meaning not just one person's salary, but if there's two adults in the home, it's the salary of the two people. The average home in the United States has 1.5 adults there. So median individual salary is $50,000. Again, you can change any of this. I've got half of their portfolio being taxable income. So if you take money out of a regular IRA or regular 401k, that's going to be taxed as ordinary income. If you take it out of a Roth IRA, that's going to not be taxed. It's not included in your ordinary income. So I've got 50% there. You can change that. You can make it 100%. You can make it 0. And then the taxable portion of retirement income, it's all coming from Social Security. And at this tax level, it's likely you'll have to run the numbers yourself. You can go to ssa.gov, which is Social Security's website, to see what percent of your Social Security is going to be taxable. But I think 80% is reasonable. And then I have an effective tax bracket of 20%. Some people would say, Azul, that's a little high. But don't forget, you also have not just federal, but you also have state income tax for many of us. So I've got that in there. Okay, under settings, expected returns for the stock market is 8%. Expected returns for the bonds is 4.5%. You can see I've also clicked fat tails. And what that means is from this, I talked earlier about a Monte Carlo simulation. It assumes a bell curve distribution, something called the Gaussian distribution. But the stock market tends to have higher highs and more frequent highs and more frequent lows than a normal bell curve would have. So those are called the tails at the ends of a bell curve. And so they have fatter tails. I've clicked that. I did not click black swan events. That's just, things that aren't supposed to happen have a way of happening a lot more often than anybody thinks that they're going to do. So I can make any plan fail, right, with enough black swan events, which is why I did not put it in for this illustration. But, black swan events do happen, right? We had the dot-com bubble burst in 99. We had the financial crisis in 2007, 2008, and 9. Then we had COVID start. So it seems like every decade, things that aren't supposed to happen do happen. So you decide for yourself whether you want to click black swan. For this illustration, I'm not. Okay, and now we can see the results of this. And so in this is a very healthy graph. Let me tell you what you're seeing. That dark blue line is the median of all cases. This is a good place for me to talk about what a Monte Carlo simulation is. It's just taking actual stock market results, randomizing it, and using statistical techniques to try to simulate, in this case, 10,000 different lives and see what the outcomes are. And the bad outcomes tend to be when you have the negative returns early on, right? So in some of those statistical cases, the early on, you get all good results. And that's what the upper end of this curve is. And then sometimes you get early on, you get bad results. And that's probably what the lower end of this is. But this is a really healthy chart. Again, it's not financial advice, but I know a lot of people that would look at this and say, good, okay, I can very comfortably retire when I'm 65 years old. But, there's a lot of money being left on the table here. That dark blue line is the median case. So roughly 5,000 of these simulations did better than the median, and roughly 5,000 cases did worse. So that's the median. And then the blue line kind of shows the outcomes from lucky to unlucky. Hopefully that makes sense. So this person can probably, this isn't financial advice again, but let's see what it would look like if instead of spending $75,000 a year, let's bump it up to $100,000. So we go back to expenses. The only thing I'm changing here is instead of $6,250 for the expenses, I'm putting in $8,333, which gets the person to $100,000 a year. And when we look at this curve, when we look at the outcome, the new Monte Carlo simulation, you can see the median there has them almost with $2 million when they die at 90. And even in some of the worst case scenarios, they're running out of money at 87. And a lot of people would be very comfortable with this. So that's one choice is instead of spending $75,000 a year, you spend a third more, which is a lot of money, and you spend $100,000. But there's another choice. And I'm a big fan of retiring as soon as you can, or at least I want everybody to be thoughtful and deliberate and make the right decision for yourself. So and I'm going to illustrate that here. Let's go back. We're going to set everything back the way it was. The first thing I'm going to do is go back to expenses, and I'm going to take it from $100,000 back down to that base case we talked about, $75,000 a year, which is $6,250 a month. Then I'm going to go to the personal information, and I'm going to say, instead of waiting to retire till you're 65, we're going to retire now. We're going to say we're retired. You can see I've switched over to the retired blue box. So that person is now retired. Social Security stays the same. Everything else is staying the same. And here you can see with the $75,000 a year, not $100,000 a year, but with $75,000 a year, this person's plan looks pretty good. A lot of people would be comfortable with this. Not everybody, but in the worst case scenarios, they're running out of money at 84. I will say few people are just going to follow that path all the way down to the ground and churn and burn down there. If you are unfortunate, you make adjustments along the way. So just because it says 84 doesn't mean that person's really going to run out of money at 84. Maybe at 70, 75, they make some tweaks so that they don't run out of money before they pass away. So in general, this is a fair number of people would be very comfortable with this chart. So it illustrates the point that I want to talk about, which is this individual has a choice. Do they keep working and get to spend a third more when they retire, or do they retire now? And you know what? Nobody can give you the right answer to that except you. That's something you have to think about. I will remind you that if you're 60 years old, you likely have less than 1,000 weeks of healthy, active time in front of you. It'd be nice if we stayed healthy, active, and mentally sharp, all the way up until we die. But the reality is, as we age, we lose that. And unfortunately, at 60, you lose it more quickly than you think. So one of the purposes of my channel is really to get people to think about that and be thoughtful and deliberate. And I'm not trying to steer anybody one way or the other, but I do want you to be conscious of it. So, when you do lose your health, when you do lose your ability to do certain things that you used to easily be able to do, you look back on it and say, I'm glad I made that decision, whichever it was. I was able to spend more money because I did retire, or man, I'm really glad I retired at 60 instead of 65, whichever's right for you. And on that topic, I have this video here that's called 5 Reasons to Retire as Soon as You Can. I encourage you to watch that, and I'll see you in there.